All right, the Mets lost out on the Cal Tucker sweepstakes to the Dodgers, but David Stearns went out and swiped Bo Bichette from signing with the Phillies. Bichette's headed to Queens on a 3-year, $126 million deal. Mets content creator Tyler Ward is back to talk some Bo Bichette news. Hey, it's just like the movie Dumb and Dumber. I'm like thinking of David Stearns, like just when you go out and you couldn't do anything dumber. You go out and do something like this and totally redeem yourself. They missed out on Tucker, but Bo Bichette's locked up to a 3-year deal. Wardy, is this a high-value signing or just a consolation prize to missing out on Cal Tucker?
Oh, this is a high value signing. Bo Bichette is without a doubt one of the most clutch hitters in all of Major League Baseball, and he exemplified exactly that, including his World Series heroics and what was not a failed effort, certainly just a failed result against those Dodgers. I mean, Bo Bichette is everything that you want in a hitter, especially in the infield. And while he was not necessarily a team need, he is most certainly a team luxury. And now he opens up the floodgates to the New York Mets and the creative possibilities that they have now to move forward this offseason by dealing other assets that no longer have proper fits on the club, as Bichette is naturally going to find himself shifting to third base. This is a high contact, significant hitter, a guy that has a lot of moxie, a guy that is a beloved clubhouse character, and more than anything else, another leader added to the pack for this Mets locker room.
Talk about him shifting to third base. David Stearns was very open about wanting to strengthen the defense. It's not easy for guys to make that jump from second to third or shortstop to third. Is he a liability, or is there a potential he could be a liability at third?
There is absolutely potential that he could be a liability at third, no doubt. I mean, when you look at his metrics at shortstop this past season, he was defensively the worst in baseball per outs above average on Baseball Savant. But I will say that transition to third base, which is naturally a less grueling position than shortstop, less range, should bode him well. You know, there's a lot of question marks as to how will his arm hold up? How is he going to naturally get the groundwork in transition? Is this something that he's been working on quite a bit that we haven't really known about? And I'm sure that has been true to a degree, because think about it, when the Mets signed Jorge Polanco earlier this offseason, we didn't know until after the fact that he had actually been working at first base with the Seattle Mariners from mid-season on last year to basically prepare himself in case he needed to transition and play different positions for whatever club would land him. So I'd imagine that Bichette has had a level of body of work at third base, just not at the major league level right now. So it'll be really indicative to see how that transition begins as we get into spring training, which, as you know, Brandon, isn't far away.
Yep, not at all. Less than a month away. The Mets just got better with this signing, but the Dodgers, they just somehow continue to get better. They already had the highest paid player in baseball in Shohei Ohtani. Back-to-back World Series titles, a roster full of stars. They added the game's best closer, Edwin Diaz, and then they still had $60 million a year to lock up Cal Tucker. It's almost not fair in a way, Wardy. So two-part question here. Does the Bichette signing close that gap just a little bit, and are the Dodgers kind of redefining the term big market team?
I'll start with the latter and say that, yes, they are redefining what a big market team means, because the Dodgers have separated themselves so significantly that really it's looking lopsided versus what we saw with Steinbrenner and the Yankees going back to the 90s. So, yes, I think that is absolutely true. And to answer your question about regarding the New York Mets and kind of bridging the gap a bit from themselves to the Dodgers, when you add a premier talent like Bo Bichette, there's no denying that you put yourself in a better position now than where you were 24 hours ago. But also knowing that the Dodgers just let in Kyle Tucker to shore up their outfield as an upgrade over Michael Conforto, the former New York Met, when they pretty much have every infinity stone imaginable at every position. No, I can't really tell you in confidence that this really changes much with how the Mets are viewed versus how far they are from that roster that the Dodgers have built. That's why the Mets have still a lot more work to do this offseason.
Well, I was going to ask you about that because, like you said, we got a little under a month left before pitchers and catchers catch that flight down to Port St. Lucie. Marcus Semien, Devin Williams, Luke Weaver, and now Bo Bichette, they're all going to take that trip down to Port St. Lucie before heading up to Flushing. But is it still sign Cody Bellinger or bust for David Stearns? Or do you think there's a move or even a string of moves that he can make to have fans believe in this team before the start of spring training?
Yeah, I do not believe it's Cody Bellinger or bust, because no one expected the Mets to land Bo Bichette. This was not an upgrade that the Mets were anticipating at all for the bat in the infield. We would love Cody Bellinger, but there's one major wrinkle that has presented itself now, and that is the fact that the Mets have to give up significant draft pick compensation because of signing Bo Bichette after he declined the qualifying offer from the Blue Jays. The Mets were to go out and sign Cody Bellinger, that's going to double down on them because Bellinger also declined the qualifying offer. So the Mets are in a position where they're going to absolutely have to deal with a lot of the basically tax from the draft. And is that something that they're willing to continue to bite the bullet on because Bo Bichette puts them in a win now stage? Possibly. And we may very well see the Mets approach a guy like Bellinger, similar to Bichette, absurdly high AV across short term, see if he wants to come to Queens for at least a season, and the Mets do everything in their power to build a roster together that they are adding the top talents that are currently available, and they're going to also look in the trade market and get very creative there, especially if, say, Bellinger does not come to fruition.
All right, so if that doesn't happen, do you feel like that big move can come during the season then? And if so, how soon in the season do you think that move can be made?
Could it come during the season? Absolutely. But unfortunately, baseball is one of these things where blockbuster trades happening before the trade deadline are very slim to none. The Boston Red Sox did a surprise move by dealing to Rafael Devers earlier in the year this past season to the San Francisco Giants, but that really caught MLB off guard. That's not something that's usually the norm. So yes, I fully anticipate the Mets to be heavily aggressive at the trade deadline, but the question now will be, will they finally flex their assets in ways that they haven't in previous years? Now, Brandon, going back to since the start of Steve Cohen becoming owner for the Mets, they've failed every single trade deadline for the most part. Year one, they traded for Javi Baez and Trevor Williams and still didn't even make playoffs, and Baez walked that same offseason. Year two, they added guys in Daniel Vogelbach, Darren Ruff, Tyler Naquin, Michael Givens. That absolutely was not needle mover moves for a Mets team that won 100+ games and then fell flat on their face down the stretch when they needed more oomph at that DH position. In 2023, the Mets were sellers there, so it didn't matter as much. 2024, we see the Mets adding at the deadline. They bring in Paul Blackburn, who is a non-factor for them. They bring in, obviously, Jesse Winker, who was very solid for them from a clubhouse character standpoint, but not a whole lot besides that. Then you get to 2025, and the Mets fail miserably at the trade deadline. Gregory Soto doesn't work out. Ryan Helsley looks like he's scared of his own shadow. And then you, of course, are going to have the one that I think was solid in Tyler Rogers, and then a Cedric Mullins who was unplayable from the time that the Mets brought him in. So it's going to be up to David Stearns to rewrite the ship and finally steer the Mets in the right direction by being aggressive and giving up the assets that it takes to land these type of players at said deadline.
All right, well, you just got that started with the Bichette signing, so there we go. There's one. All right, Wardy, appreciate you hopping on with this, man.
Thank you so much, Brandon.